red shirt right up front.
Oh, yeah.
Oops, sorry.
Great time singing and fellowshipping and sharing stories of the past and everything that takes place. So if you have access to a hymn book, I'd ask you to turn to number 188. 188, Glory to His Name. And this is a congregation hymn. I'm going to ask you to all stand, please, and sing just as loud as you can. I'm going to raise the room.
For more than 60 years, he ministered to the people of Digby. In 1903, he resigned, and 4 years later, he died. Often to the...
I came here 40 years ago, this past May. That's when I arrived here as a student pastor and commuted from here to Digby College 3 days a week. And we've had some very good memories of our time spent here. Some of those trips weren't so easy, going back and forth to Div College. I remember one day coming home and just coming down the hill here, and a truck stopped right in front of me, a real heavy snowstorm. I couldn't see a thing. And rather than running to the back of the truck, I headed for the ditch just because the school bus was coming up the hill. And so anyway, I avoided an accident, but I couldn't get out of the snowbank. I was stuck. And I'm trying to think who it was that was driving the school bus. They ran the post office down here.
Willie Dakin?
Willie Dakin. I was trying to think of that coming here. And Willie was going up in the school bus. He rolled his window down and said, "I'll be right back." He said, "Got one more stop." He said, "I'll come back and get my tractor and pull you out." So that was the neighborliness of the community. And then in 1972, the year I graduated, I was ordained from this sanctuary right here where you're holding your special services today. So I do have fond memories and a great deal of interest in what's going on, and I'm glad that finally we got invited here. By that, I mean, the invitation came early in May, but we didn't get it. It was sent out in May, we didn't get it, and it came back within last week. And so somebody called, I guess Keane called us.
Wednesday was the earliest that you knew.
Okay, yes. So I'm glad that they finally got the message through. Elena regrets that she couldn't be here because we're hosting a team for Tidal Impact and also Vacation Bible School beginning tomorrow. And so she's involved with the craft there. So that she wasn't able to come. But she wanted me to give you her greetings. And it has been I'm glad that Paul came and picked me up at the ferry this afternoon. So we finally were able to be here.
Okay. If no one's going to volunteer, I'm going to pick you in line. Okay.
I'm Darrell Chase, and it's been over 50 years ago since I've been here. Anybody here that remembers when I was here? There is a few. There are a few. I came here with 2 small children in January, and it was quite a drive coming from Advocate Harbor to here, I didn't find Parsonage the warmest place in the world, to say the least, but we managed, and I drove back and forth to Woeful as well, and wrecked a car in the bargain, and had to do some scrambling there and stay up for a while and all that sort of thing, but it worked out in the end. We had 4 churches, but we rotated a couple of them, and I did that most of my ministry. And towards the end of my ministry, I had a throat problem. I went to a voice specialist, and he said, "I understand you've been a minister." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "How long did you preach? How long have you been preaching?" And I said, "Over 40 years." He said, "How many of those churches had mics?" And I said, "The last 3. He said, "I can tell you your problem." But the Lord has been gracious, and we do have
Okay. So that would give the next one in line either Papa or I'll be calling on Fred now.
Keep it fair, Fred. At this time, we've got the combined choir with Rossman and Centreville. And they like to come forward, and they're going to do a favor to the church as well. history this time, if Ruby would please come and share with us on Crossroads Church.
This was sent to the only owner of previous and present living God, and Alan Gibson is such an excellent historic writer and tells the story of how the church originated. I will use his explanation. There are several United Baptist congregations in Digby Neck, all of which count their ages from 1809, when Reverend Peter Crandall began the work from which they developed. Under his leadership and that of his successor, Reverend J.C. Morse, the congregation grew in numbers and built churches in the various communities from which its members came. It was the second Baptist church in Digby County and the first on Digby Neck, when the body with 19 members scattered along the neck and on the island was organized in 1809. The next year, when Mr. Crandall was pastor, saw 60 added to the membership. Reverend Peter Crandall began preaching in 1800 and soon gained a reputation as a successful evangelist. He continued to serve on Digby Neck until his death in 1838, a period during which the growing churches were twice divided into separate pastors. In 1841, John Chipman Morris came to the area and was ordained there in March of 1842. His ministry on Digby Neck continued for 63 years, when he retired in 1903 at the age of 85. On April 21st, 1907, he died. In 1892, he received an honorary doctorate in divinity from Acacia College. Dr. Morse is described by one biographer as having the temperament of the poet, the 3 signs of the philosopher, the eloquence of the orator. Dr. Morse, during his years with the Church of the Digby Neck, he received 220 new members for baptism. Dr. Morse had been 15 years on this pastorate when in 1856 the meeting house at Rossway was dedicated. It is reported that revival followed that event. That is not surprising because revivals appeared frequently to have occurred during the Morris ministry. It appears that revival also preceded the building of the Rossway Church, since in 1855 the pastor baptized a total of 55 persons. By 1880 there were 2 distinct church organizations on Digby Neck, to each of which Reverend Morse gave part of his time. One was known as Digby Neck First Baptist Church, a congregation which by that time had 3 preaching places. These were located at Centreville, Waterford, and Rossway.
200 years of continual ministry on Digby Neck. Now you got 200 years more, so pace yourself. Pace yourself. I have some personal anecdotes, and I also have one from history. I have a story from history that I want to say, and I love your hat, Sharon. What do we do with them afterwards? Amazing. I thought you had your ears plugged. It was just something to hold you back. This is a wonderful time together. Lester Mullen and I came and we began our work on Springwater Habitation Farm. But we were invited. He was an Anglican. I was United. Pastor a Baptist church. And we thought this was an ecumenical milestone. And it was. And it was a very good. Why? Because we all loved the Lord Jesus. That's why. And we'd all been regenerated by his precious sacrifice on the cross. And so whatever denomination affiliation we had, the key thing was that we belonged to Christ. And Christ was the center of our ministry. We had one service here with the fishermen. And this place was packed up with fishermen because I began to fish here. I had Vincent Raymond's boat and his license, and I was going to fish with this thing that would eventually pump out the Bay of Fundy 3 times. But we had a service here, and I can remember one hymn. It was an evening service, and we asked for, I think it was 6 or 7 verses. It seemed like an eternal number of verses. And I thought I had mentioned the number of verses we would sing. But when we began the hymn, we all sang a different verse. And I can remember somebody saying, I think it was Les, isn't that a good thing? We have a hymn so big that everybody can choose their own verse. And that was the kind of warm spirit we had at that particular time. Now I have 2 very vivid memories. And one is the working with the young people in canoe tripping. And we used our old workshop, fish house, whatever it was, in the back of Ronald and Francis Moorehouse's home, which we had bought. We used to fish out to plan canoe trips. And I would spread out a big sheet of paper on one of these rolls, you know, you spread it out, and all the guys and girls were sitting around this thing, and we planned the canoe trip. And then we rolled up the plan, and off we went to Scotia or wherever it was. And we had a marvelous trip of time. You got to know the children very well. They got to know you, and you got sort of bonded in this business of canoeing. We took canoe courses from Canoe Nova Scotia and became familiar with the skills necessary to do this. It was a marvelous experience, and I still remember the times we had together doing that. The second thing was the particular church services that we had. There was always a core of committed people in our church service. They ran Sunday school, they did the music, they were supporting us in prayer, they had prayer meetings, Bible studies, they were vital. And that's probably the most important thing about a Christian congregation today, is to be unified at the center. Because Jesus is the center, and his word is studied very carefully, very diligently. Now there's one historical story that I want to tell you. It's been with me for years. I've told you already 2 or 3 times. And then I'm going to close, and it's going to be your turn. Now I don't know which minister it was, way back when. But it was a time when they walked everywhere. Remember that story? Yes. It didn't, no, it was not your head, but don't tell anybody. This is how the story goes. And he wore out his shoes. And it was costing the congregation a lot of money to keep him in good shoes. And so they decided, in this particular congregational field, buy him a horse. We'll buy him a horse. A good horse. And he'll have iron shoes. It'll be fun. And so they said, this can't be any kind of a horse. This has to be a Christian horse. It's got to be a Christian horse. Therefore, instead of woe, it would be amen. And instead of giddy up, it would be hallelujah. And so one Sunday morning, the horse was out the front of the door. And the minister was introduced to the horse. And before anybody could tell him what to say to the horse, he jumped on the horse and he said, hallelujah. Of course the horse took off. Took off, only knew Christian language. But the horse soon turned around at the road here and went down towards the shore. And you know the shore, way back when, had a very long jetty, right out into the Bay of Fundy. You know that, don't you? And of course the Bay of Fundy tides are, what, 23, 24 feet right here? I can remember climbing up the ladder backwards because the ladder went this way. I remember doing that. Anyway, and the horse was going full pelt down there. And of course he said, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then finally he said, as he got closer to the pier, whoa, was me. Nothing happened. The horse paid no attention to him at all. Until they got to the end. Just before the pier really began. And he began to pray. He knew his time was short. And he said, Lord, into your hands I commit my spirit. And then he said, Amen. And the horse skidded to a halt right at the end of the pier. And guess what he said? Hallelujah!
Maybe while the Centreville choir's coming in, right?
Okay.
But maybe while we're doing that, if I'm not
Waiting here about 3 months ago, and we came in 1973, and we came both in our little trailers. We had a little camper trailer, one of the small and Bailey ones or something. And of course, with the trailer, Les had to bring his tractor, and we had no house or anything. So, and we had no place to stay or anything. But the first thing the people offered us was they needed a pastor. So they invited Bob and Les to do the pastoring here. And they had a parsonage because they had no pastor that was empty. So they offered us the parsonage for the winter, and Bob bought a house down in Centreville, and there we were for the winter. Then we moved up, and from the parsonage we moved up to the Bruder House because Les's mother had a farm, and we put the Bruder House out on the empty field, which now became the beginnings of Springwater Habitation, which Bob had mentioned. But right from the very beginning, we did have a really good time. As Bob said, we were well received, everybody, and we were here during the charismatic movement, so Les finally got the name of being an Anglo-Baptist-Costal, because he added to the Anglican and the Baptist the Pentecostal element of the charismatic movement. So anyway, we had a wonderful time. We've had many good services, and as Bob said, we could go all night telling some of the stories of the young people's things that we did and so on. And then Les died 20 years ago. 20 years ago since he passed away. But I stayed on in the community, and I've just been part of the community till then, until April. And the Lord told me it was time to move on. And so I've moved from here up to Lance, Nova Scotia, and but this is still home. These are home. We lived with the people in Centreville for the first winter with a horse in the barn, because Lexus got a pony with him too, as well as the tractor. And he was a farmer by heart. But you didn't tell him how terrible it was when he went out on the boats with you, did you? He tried to be a fisherman. And so anyway, we went back to farming, and we have had a wonderful, I've had a wonderful time here. The Lord has certainly provided me with many, many friends and many, well, family. I've got a big family here, and I'm most appreciative of all that God has done. And we did have a good time together. So
We are so
Church history again. Margaret, Heidi, you got something to share, and then you finish. Ruth's got a little bit she's going to share.
I wonder sometimes how you get yourself in a mess. How did I get myself in this mess? And Paul, don't take any pictures.
Wait a minute, I got another camera up there. Jack, if you got a, no, never mind, here it is. Let me use this one. All right.
This is the First Baptist Church in Digby. The Second Baptist Church in Digby County. And the first on Digby Neck was organized in 1809.
19 members. They were scattered on Digby Neck Islands. Reverend Peter Crandall was one minister you want to remember. He was the minister. The records were lost from 1804 to 1825, but the membership increased to 136 that year in 1825. 73 residents on the island, and they organized into a separate church, Dry Island. It was in 63 on Digby Neck. In 1830, the membership was reduced to 59, and it consisted of 4 preaching stations: Gulliver's Hole, Trout Cove, Sandy Cove, and Little River. And over the years, 1832 to 1836, membership increased to 103. In 1836, it was once divided again, and the church formed at Little River, Sandy Cove. So membership was reduced to 43. As Mary had said to Peter Crandall, I think to be one of the important ministers.
To add to a little bit of the history, Sarah Titus was one of the daughters of Captain Isaac Titus. Sarah came to Digby with her parents in 1784 and settled at Trout Cove, now Centreville, 4 years later. She became in 1798 the earliest convert to Baptist sentiments of the Northern Peninsula. Sarah and Jacob Cornwall Jr. were among the founders of the First Digby Neck Church, organized December 23rd.
What does a bachelor Baptist minister do on a Saturday evening in Digby? I am reminded of the evening that I was home on a Saturday evening preparing for Sunday morning services. This is not the beginning of a confession. And I was typing on the bulletin, but I also, besides shining my shoes, I was working on a pair of socks. And I had enough skill with a needle and thread to be able to do that. And in the midst of this process, I started to pay attention what was being sung on the radio. You know, sort of like the golden oldies from St. John station. And it was Eleanor Rigby. Are you familiar with the Beatles song Eleanor Rigby? And particularly when it got to the point about the clergyman who was darning his socks on a Saturday evening. And I thought to myself, oh no, it's come to this. Well, there were some diversions. And for those who would put up with me during those years, they knew that I could go late into the evening, and sometimes people went to bed in their own homes, and I was still visiting. It was early rumored that I never slept. You know why that rumor got around? Because there would be occasions when I worked the whole way through the night, and the truckers would be coming up for the early run of the ferry for Boston. And it got to be a habit with some of them that they would see me at the kitchen table and they would be looking forward to hooting their horn, and I waved to them as they went by. That's how it got around that I never slept. I thought one time, out of interest, it would be fun to dress a mannequin up and put it at the kitchen table just to see what would happen. Well, as you've listened to the gentlemen who have stood here before this afternoon, I knew that when I came to the Neck and I first started to explore some of the people who had been here before me, that there was a large task to do, because the Lord has blessed with a tremendous tradition of gospel preaching and fruit of ministry and good, solid biblical teaching, and a tradition of shepherding too. And in my first year, I never thought I would last the first year. I sat down at the kitchen table. Mind you, there was not much for furniture at that point on the first day that I entered into the parsonage. But with some community collection, I was outfitted even with a bed on the second night of being here. But a fond memory is that Rita made sure I was taken care of because she sent Eddie down with a pot pie. And that was my supper on my first evening in the parsonage. And certainly, I enjoyed many good meals, spiritual conversation, Bible studies, and over those years, enjoyed the full roundness of the Baptist ministry. There's a couple of things I'd like to make mention of. One of my favorite stories is about an emergency that took place on an afternoon. I had come in from shoveling the driveway out after a winter storm, and I was taking a shower. And I thought I had heard this sound somewhere around the house. So I quickly got out of the shower and put on a pair of pants and a t-shirt, and I ran out to the kitchen because I thought there was somebody pounding at the door. And for some reason, I was possessed to go to the front window of the house. And there I looked in the snow, and there were these impressions. And I looked this way to see where they came from. And I thought to myself, it seems like somebody is coming from next door. Next door being Bernard and Gloria's. So I ran out and went over next door, and the emergency was now subsiding. Gloria had put in a plastic bowl dough that was rising, bread that was rising, and she forgot that she had one of the burners on. And the plastic bowl had caught fire. And from next door, come running, heard you. I got to bring Florence, yes. Florence came running and had put it out, so I was on the very tail end of this crisis. And the first thing that Gloria said to me, she said, "John, didn't you recognize my footprints in the snow?" I repeated that question on many an evening since. I just love telling that. So, wonderful times. Now, certainly, the pastors who have gone before me are remembered by certain things of their ministry. For instance, during Jack's time was putting the basement under the church in Rossway. You know, way before any of this was Dr. Morris. Remembered for the longevity of his ministry, but also the significant baptisms that took place, as have been referred to. And, you know, certainly the Springwater years, and with Bob and Lester, fondly remembered within the pastorate in meetings up at Springwater, and with Mark, the reopening of the Waterford Church for special evangelistic services and things like this. But you know, I think the thing that got away from the field is that they did not marry me off.